Have you ever heard of autism and auditory processing disorder, APD? These terms often seem worlds apart, but there's a surprising link between them that few people know about. What if I told you that many of the sensory challenges faced by autistic individuals are closely tied to how the brain processes sounds? Sounds intriguing, right? This connection, although rarely discussed, can explain many day-to-day difficulties that aren't immediately obvious. We tend to avoid the topic out of fear of not understanding it or thinking it's too complex, but the truth is that understanding this relationship can be the key to transforming lives, not only for those who live with it but also for those around them. What few people realize is that by understanding what's happening behind these sensory difficulties, we are one step closer to finding real, practical solutions. Who hasn't had to deal with the discomfort of incessant noise or felt exhausted just trying to focus on a conversation in a noisy environment? For many, this is occasional. But for people with APD and autism, it's a constant reality. And here's the good news: by learning more about this process, you not only learn to cope better with it, but you also discover ways to support others who face these challenges every day. Let's dive into this conversation, clarify what APD is, demystify its relationship with autism, and uncover how small actions and attitude changes can have a profound impact. You'll see that the path to greater understanding is closer than it seems, and that true comprehension can indeed be transformative. Understanding auditory processing disorder, APD. Auditory processing disorder, APD, might sound like a technical term, but don't let the complicated name intimidate you. In essence, it describes a condition in which the brain struggles to process sounds, even when the ears are functioning perfectly. It doesn't affect hearing itself; the sounds are heard, but the brain has trouble interpreting them properly. Imagine receiving a voice message that's full of static and cuts off unexpectedly. That's how sounds can feel for someone with APD. It's almost like the brain needs a translation that doesn't always come quickly. When it comes to symptoms, individuals with APD tend to face challenges that aren't immediately apparent to others. For instance, they might struggle to distinguish between similar sounds, like a phone ringing and a doorbell, or even between similar-sounding words. Have you ever noticed someone who seems delayed in responding during a conversation, almost as if they are still tuning into what was said? That's a common symptom. Additionally, noisy environments, like a bustling restaurant, can feel like a nightmare, with overlapping sounds blending into a confusing noise that's hard to separate. It's important to note that APD is not about intelligence or lack of attention; it's about how the brain processes auditory information. Imagine trying to solve an auditory puzzle with pieces that just don't fit, even though you have them all. This is the daily struggle for those with this condition. To understand it better, think about trying to listen to an important explanation while a loud radio is playing in the background. It's tiring, isn't it? For someone dealing with APD, that feeling can occur frequently, even in seemingly ordinary situations. As we'll see later, there are ways to manage these challenges and find strategies that really help. Connection with autism. Often, APD and autism go hand in hand, with a connection that can be quite surprising. Studies show that about 50% of autistic individuals exhibit APD symptoms, which isn't a coincidence since both share sensory challenges. The brain of an autistic person can process information differently, and when it comes to sounds, this becomes even more evident. It's as if the brain has a queue of information to process, and sound ends up at the end of the line, waiting its turn. This explains why a simple sound can cause so much confusion or discomfort. There's an interesting neurological basis behind this connection. Differences in the structure of the auditory cortex, the part of the brain responsible for processing sounds, can lead to an unconventional interpretation of surrounding noises. This means that for people with autism, certain sounds might feel amplified, irritating, or even painful. Imagine being in a supermarket and hearing the checkout beeps, conversations, and footsteps all at once and at maximum volume. This sensory overload contributes to the challenges they face daily, affecting their ability to focus or even interact socially. This intersection between autism and APD reveals how complex and unique sensory experiences can be for each individual. Often, what is mere background noise for a neurotypical person can become an overwhelming barrier for someone on the autism spectrum. Understanding this overlap can help us become more empathetic and realize that when someone seems uncomfortable or confused by something seemingly simple, there is actually a very complex mental process occurring. And that's when we can start thinking of strategies that truly make a difference, small changes that we'll explore further, but that can entirely transform these experiences. Real-life experiences and challenges. Living with APD brings challenges that most people wouldn't even imagine. Picture yourself in a group conversation where everyone starts talking at once. For someone with APD, those conversations can feel like trying to watch multiple TV channels simultaneously, confusing, frustrating, and even exhausting. Often, people dealing with this condition end up avoiding these situations because they simply can't keep up. A simple family gathering, for instance, can become a daunting task where catching the words feels like double the work while everyone else follows along naturally. Another common obstacle is sensitivity to background noise. A sound that goes unnoticed by most, like the hum of a fan or a ringing phone in the background, can be extremely unsettling for someone with APD. This added noise makes processing other auditory information a battle, creating a barrier to effective communication. Imagine trying to listen to someone while a band is playing right beside you. It's a constant struggle to focus on the correct voice while the environment seems like absolute chaos. And then there's the issue of sound discrimination. Differentiating between similar sounds can feel like playing a guessing game without enough clues. For example, words like cat and cap can sound so similar that they get easily confused, and depending on the context, they can completely change the meaning of the sentence. This can lead to misunderstandings, and many times, someone with APD feels the need to mentally repeat what they heard to ensure they're interpreting it correctly. This repetition consumes energy, causing fatigue and sometimes leading to withdrawal from the conversation. Given these difficulties, it's easy to see how important it is to find strategies to navigate these challenges. The good news is that there are tools that can help alleviate some of these barriers, from using noise-canceling headphones to finding quiet spaces for better focus. In the next section, we'll explore some of these strategies that can make a real difference in everyday life. Practical strategies for navigating APD. Managing APD requires creativity and, above all, patience. One of the best ways to make everyday life easier is by using noise-canceling headphones. Imagine having the power to turn off the constant noise around you, like pressing a button to transform your environment into a tranquil island. For those facing auditory challenges, these headphones are a real blessing. They help reduce distractions and allow the person to focus on what truly matters, whether it's a conversation, a study task, or even just relaxing. Another resource that can make a huge difference is using speech recognition tools, such as real-time transcription apps. These apps are like a tour guide for conversations. They turn what's being said into text, making everything visible so that someone with APD can follow along at their own pace. Imagine being in a complicated lecture full of information and having the ability to read instead of just listening. It's a way to ensure that no important information is lost along the way. Additionally, having written instructions always helps to complement verbal communication, minimizing misunderstandings. Another valuable tip is to create quieter environments whenever possible. If you're studying or working on an important task, why not find a quieter place? Sometimes, a small change like this can have a big impact. It's also important to remember to take regular breaks. Our brains are not machines, and for someone who needs to process a lot of auditory effort, rest is crucial. These breaks help reduce the mental fatigue that often arises in situations of sensory overload. Something as simple as a short walk or a moment of silence can make a difference. Each of these strategies is a piece of the puzzle to make life with APD more manageable and less stressful. Of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone has to find what works best for them, which may mean mixing different approaches. And when we think about community and support, there is so much more we can do, from finding support groups to educating those around us about these issues. We'll talk more about this in the next section. Community and advocacy. For those living with APD or anyone close to someone facing this condition, finding support within the community can make all the difference. There are support groups, both online and in person, where people share their stories, challenges, and of course, their victories. These connections are essential because they bring a sense of belonging and show that no one is alone in this journey. After all, sharing a difficult experience with someone who understands can be incredibly comforting, and it also brings opportunities to exchange tips that really work day to day. In addition to seeking support, the importance of educating others cannot be underestimated. APD is still something many people know little about, so raising awareness helps reduce stigma and create more understanding. Explaining how the brain processes sounds differently might seem technical, but often, a simple conversation about what it's like to live with APD can change the perspective of someone who's never heard of it. Imagine if each of us had the chance to explain to our friends or coworkers what it means to go through such situations. Not only would it increase empathy, but it would also help create more welcoming environments. And this awareness can indeed lead to practical changes. In schools, for example, teachers who understand the challenges of APD can adapt their lessons by using more visual materials and providing written instructions. At work, colleagues and managers who are aware of the obstacles faced by someone with APD can adjust communication, perhaps by speaking more clearly and avoiding overly noisy situations. These are small gestures, but in the end, they make a huge difference. Every adaptation is a step toward a more inclusive environment where everyone has a chance to express themselves and participate fully. The power of support and education is immense, and together, we can truly make a difference. This leads us to conclude this learning cycle about APD and autism, but also opens doors for us to apply these lessons and be part of a real and meaningful change. Now that we have a better understanding of the connection between autism and auditory processing disorder, APD, it's clear how powerful knowledge can be as a tool. How can we apply all this in our daily lives? Are we being understanding enough with those who face these challenges? What steps can we take to transform our surroundings into a more welcoming and inclusive place? Think about the strategies we discussed, the support methods we mentioned, and ask yourself, what change can I make today to make someone's life easier? I want to challenge you to apply at least one of these strategies, whether in your own life or in someone else's life. Try using a transcription app, find a quieter space, or simply be more patient with someone who needs more time to process what was said. Small steps have the power to create big transformations. Also, remember, education starts with a conversation, and you can be the one to take the first step, bringing more understanding to those around you. If you like this content, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you can keep learning more about the topic. And now I want to hear from you. Which of the challenges mentioned resonated most with your reality? Leave your comment below, and let's continue this conversation.